see your mother. You were only given one, go see your mother. And you know that you will never have another. Go see your mother. Go see your mom.
Welcome to Jewish Boy Calls His Mother. I'm your host, Sadia. This is my mother, Ema. Hey, Ema.
Hello.
All right. So we were talking earlier today, and you were mentioning something on the lines of something or another. My brain's kind of fried right now.
I was reminiscing a little bit like over the week. And what happened was, well, first it started off, my reminiscing started off when one of the talk show, one of the news people in the morning, what's it, 8:50, has this man and this woman who are on early in the morning. You know, the woman's name is Jen. I forgot what the other guy's name is, but anyway. And he mentioned something years ago about the pie prank that became popular on many college campuses. The pie prank, when I was in college, we didn't have the pie prank, but it happened shortly after I graduated already. And I actually met a girl at Machon Khan in the dormitory who was telling us about her college that they had participated in the pie prank. The pie prank was students would get together and they would donate a certain amount of money to a charity, or usually it was American Cancer or multiple sclerosis, something like that. And they would write up a letter, and while the professor was lecturing, they would come and saying that they had an important note from the office, and he would hand him the letter, and he would look at it, or he or she would look at it, and it would say, you know, thank you so much for participating in our pie prank. Because of you, say like $1,000 or $2,000, whatever the amount was, has been donated to, and they would name the charity. And as he was reading it, she was reading it, they would have a pie pan that was full of whipped cream and smash it in his or her face. So I was thinking about this girl at Machon Khan was telling us. Then I forgot which college she went to, but originally they used regular whipped cream. And then a problem came up because they had some teachers and some professors that were Jewish. So now the Jewish students are telling the Goyish students, hey, we can't have just ordinary whipped cream. It's got to be kosher whipped cream. So, okay, so it's got to be kosher whipped cream. And then they had one or two professors that were actually Orthodox Jews that kept Chav Yisrael. So they said, now it's got to be Chav Yisrael whipped cream. And then they had the idea of parva whipped cream. And then someone had the idea, forget the whipped cream, just use shaving cream. So I was remembering the time, this was before the age of the college pie pranks, but I was remembering the days of radio stations. And if you were lucky enough, like I was, to have friends that worked in radio stations or on campus, if you had friends that actually, did like an internship or did their training in many college campuses have their own radio station. And you have students that are majoring in mass communication or majoring in, and so they could work, or they could do an internship in the college radio stations. This woman was telling me that on her campus that she and some friends, one of the pranks that kids like doing, young people like doing in those days, was, like I said, if you were lucky enough to have somebody either working in a radio station or had access to the radio or the campus radio station, you would go to the station and you would go into the broadcasting room when your friend or whoever was delivering the news. And they had to, of course, deliver the news in an even tone of voice. So the prank was to try to make this person laugh, or to try to somehow, do something that would make them like lose it for a minute or laugh or something while they were trying to read the news. So this woman told me she and her friends took these pie pans and they filled them with shaving cream, and they went to the radio station where one of their friends was a broadcaster, was broadcasting the news. And while he was in the middle of broadcasting the news, they smashed the pie pan with the whipped cream right into his face. And they said he could not flinch. He couldn't laugh. He couldn't do anything. He had to keep reading the news in an even tone of voice, like nothing was happening, while all this shaving cream was dripping on him and on the desk and the equipment in front of him.
I love it.
I was also thinking, it also jogged my memory about something that people, it's part of history, I guess, part of tech history, where this is the days of record players. And this is even before, they had cassette tapes, but in most radio studios where they played music, they had these big turntables and they had regular records that they would play, that they would broadcast music from. This is before, tech now, the CDs and, everything else now. So I don't know how radio stations do it now, but I had a chance to sit in a radio station and watch a gentleman who was, that's why they had the term disc jockey, because you were taking these big discs, these records, and you were putting them on these turntables, and you couldn't just turn them on. Evidently, there was a certain technique I remember that you needed to use to bring the music out. In other words, now if you waited until it was time to play the song, and you just dropped the needle at that point, it was called wowing in. People in broadcasting hated it. It meant that the disc jockey had not properly prepared the records. You had to take the records and you had to start them like a split second before you put it on the air. Otherwise, if you waited to drop the needle as you were putting it on the air, and as you didn't prepare the record properly, get it started a split second before broadcasting it, it would have the effect of going into the music.
Interesting.
It was called wowing in. And like I said, people in broadcast, when they would listen to the radio and somebody would wow and they go, "Oh God, he didn't do that right. She didn't do that right. They didn't prepare the record in time." And you had two turntables there. So sometimes you might have songs back to back. So while you had one song going, you had another turntable with another record, and you had to prepare it, have it started a split second before you switched to the next song. It was like a whole thing.
Did you ever want to work in radio?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I was thinking about being a broadcaster. Yeah, I kind of played around with that idea. When I was a teenager, I really wanted to have a ham radio set.
Yes. Yeah, we talked about that.
Yeah, right. And I actually got the booklet and I studied for the test. It was called a Class 3 license that you had to have a ham radio set. In fact, even to broadcast, I don't know what it's like now, but even to just broadcast, even to just work in a radio station to broadcast, you had to at least have this Class 3 radio license. And you had to you studied a booklet that went over the basic rules of broadcasting. Like you couldn't have dead time. You have to, if you have more than 2 minutes of dead time, you could be fined by the FCC. So if something goes wrong where you can't broadcast, you have to either shut down your equipment, stop broadcasting entirely, or you had to put a promo on there, or you had to put something on there to go on the air. You had to put something on the air. You couldn't just have what's called dead air or dead time.
Would you ever want to create your own show? Did you have any thoughts of how would you want it? Maybe a classical music show or anything like that?
Sometimes I would dream about doing something like that, because I would love to have some sort of show of classical music that would popularize classical music. People don't realize, people are prejudiced against classical music, and they're prejudiced because they're not educated. it's like the joke is you come across these people. I hate classical music. I hate. Then why do you have 1812 Overture on your phone as a ringtone? Oh, I didn't know that was classical music.
So what would you do to popularize classical music if you had your own radio show?
Basically, talk a little bit about the history of the composer, a little bit of biography of the composer. Talk about what went into the composition, and play really like nice things like Dvorak's Ninth Symphony, the New World Symphony. That's a beautiful piece. Smetana's Moldau. That is a gorgeous piece. As a matter of fact, I was driving with my granddaughter the other day, and I decided to put on Smetana's Moldau for her because the Moldau, well, the main thing with the Moldau, it sounds like Hatikva. Did we ever talk about this?
I think so. It sounds familiar. I think we mentioned
Right.
something like this.
And so I once asked I called up a classical radio station and asked the broadcaster who was playing the Moldau. I mentioned about Hatikva, and I said, "Did Smetana was this a Jewish folk song that Smetana borrowed?" And he said he doesn't know, but maybe it's the opposite way. That maybe the tune to the Moldau was a popular Czech folk melody that the Jews, it could be Nutin Bialik, I think was the one who wrote Hatikva. I don't know if he wrote the music to it, but I know he wrote the words to it. And maybe 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 the Israelis took this on as their national anthem because it was such a very nice tune.
Well, because I know that the song itself, I believe the music was by Shmuel Cohen, a composer for he did the composition for Hatikva.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not so sure about the I guess the melody's origins.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's based on something called La Mantovana, a 16th century Italian song. It was composed by Giuseppe Sensei or Giuseppe Del Beato
Mm-hmm.
from the 1600s.
That's interesting. Well, how did Shmuel Cohen get this? I mean, where did he get the idea to borrow this tune?
I'll be honest with you, I don't know. Just because it was used by a Czech composer. I think better Smetana.
Yeah, Smetana, Frederick Smetana. Yeah, right.
Yeah. So it was used.
So Smetana borrowed the Italian song.
So it was a borrowed from the Italians, from the Czech, who then I think was lifted off. I said a second part, I believe, was from somewhere in Prague, and then the melody was used by a French composer, Camille Santesianis, in Rhapsody Britannique.
Oh my gosh!
And then it was adapted as a tikva by Samuel Cohen in 1888.
Because I know in what was the year?
1888. Yeah.
I think so. Did he know that Smetana used it? I mean, did he borrow it from Smetana, or did he borrow it from this French composer?
I think everything just was borrowed from everybody. I mean, if you understand the concept of art, it's just constantly borrowed from something else, from something else, from something else. Don't be ashamed to. I was taught in architectural school, don't be ashamed to steal an idea. Well,
you're not stealing, you're adapting.
Well, no, they called it that. They say good artists borrow, great artists steal. That's what I was taught.
Because I know the Moldau. I mean, the theme goes da 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 da.
Yeah, because the melody. Because the Hatikva follows more of a minor scale.
This was a minor scale.
I know, but Hatikva itself was focused on a minor scale.
This is also on a minor scale.
I know. I have no idea what I'm talking about. I'm reading off of Wikipedia. What are you talking about? What do you want from me? But
I'll tell you. I got to tell you a funny story about major and minor scales.
Yes.
There was I was doing a music program at TA for their nursery school graduation or kindergarten graduation. I forgot which one
Yeah.
it was. And there was a song that went about Bubby's Latkes, and it goes da 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 da. It's da da da. It's the melody of Tion 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 da 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 na 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 da 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 na 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 na. Yeah. So anyway, so this teacher who that was one of the frustrations I had as being a music teacher was when we would have these programs and teachers who had no training in music would want me to do the music a certain way. And I would try to tell them, no, that's not how it goes, or it's better to do it this way. And no, 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 we want it this way. What can you do? Customer's always right. I'm sure you found that as an architect too. People who
Yeah.
know nothing about buildings telling you that they want it done this way.
Oh, it's
So,
terrible. Yeah.
so she starts to sing the song with the class, and she sings it in a major key. So instead of done da 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 da, it's da 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 da. I said, wait a minute, that's not how it goes. It goes like this. I started to play it, and she goes, "You're right. That is how it goes." Then the same teacher, I found, especially with children, when you're doing a music program with children, you need an intro, and then you need to play the first note so that they hear that first note and can sing it, because these are little kids. They're preschoolers. They need to hear that first note. No. She wanted no introduction, no first note. She wanted me just to go right into the music cold. And I told her, but the kids are not going to hear the correct note to come in on. Nope, that's how she wants it.
Jeez. Oh yeah. No, you mentioned, you brought up something about dealing with talking to people who know nothing about your profession or an art, and then trying to tell you what to do. I mean, I've seen it where you have people just brazenly, saying you want this thing. I remember speaking to this one person. He wanted me to do a rendering of a possibility of a building, and I was like, okay. So I came up with an idea, showed it to him. He's like, no, it needs to be a rectangle. I'm like, why do you need it to be a rectangle? He's like, because on the permit we showed him a rectangle, so it has to be a rectangle. Like, what do you mean? And he was basically saying, because on the permit plans, on the site plan, they showed them a rectangle. He thinks I have to render him an exact rectangle, but like a 3D image of a building like a rectangle, and that's the only thing they're going to take. I'm like, I don't think you're understanding what's going on. I tried to educate and talk to him, and it just crashed and burned, because he just he stopped taking my calls. He stopped talking to me about it, because I made these renderings for him, and he just never paid me for it. Nothing.
No.
And I tried to have a conversation with him, and he just didn't want to hear it. So I was like, whatever. It happens. But yeah, it's always so funny when you have people and that's where I want to circle back to what you were saying before about, trying to convince people to be interested in classical music. And if you had a radio show, how would you make it interesting? Would you have maybe gags or storylines, or what would you do?
A combination of all that. Yeah. There was a man, I forgot his name, who on WBAL for a while, for about an hour or so, had exactly that. He had an hour of classical music where he told jokes, he told background music. He even had some performances like this one. I remember this one time he had a violin performance that was bad, and he played it on there. And he said, yeah, he was sharp, he was flat, he was horrible. But he purposely did that. He purposely, he wanted to show the audience an example of a poor performance.
Did you have anybody that, I guess, I know this inspired you, so to speak, with classical music, or were you always into it?
It started when I was in 6th grade with my very first Baltimore Symphony concert. Yep. I went to my first Baltimore Symphony concert and just heard the music and just wow, I was just totally sold on it. I just loved it.
Do you remember the piece?
I think Moldau was it. Yeah, I think it might have been the Moldau because I
Wow,
remember hearing it and thinking to myself, why are they playing Hatikva?
that's very cute.
Oh, by the way, I've got an interesting story about like national Hatikva national anthems. I had a friend from South Africa who was attending Machon Khan with me, and I brought her home with me as a guest for a weekend. Also, she was very anxious when she heard I was from Baltimore. She was very anxious to go to the Baltimore Museum of Art to see one of the copies of Rodin's Thinker. But they didn't at that time. They didn't have too much like that in South Africa. This was oh my goodness, this was 1970. This was like 1975. As a matter of fact, while she was attending Machon Chana in 1974, 75, that's when television came to South Africa for the first time. South
Wow.
Africa did not have television until like 74, 75. That's something. So anyway, so we there was Baltimore what is it the Israeli Philharmonic was playing at the Lyric Theater. And one of the pieces they were supposed to play, I think Beethoven's Fifth Symphony or something, or Beethoven's Seventh Symphony or whatever. So everybody was anxious to see Israeli Philharmonic playing Beethoven. Wow, what kind of rendition are we going to hear now? Well, first of all, they disappointed the whole audience by saying, this is really a heritage program. So we changed our mind and decided to play Mahler's, one of Mahler's works instead of Beethoven. Because it's supposed to be like a Jewish heritage concert. Okay, so you heard the audience groan. People happy about that. They began the concert by playing many concerts, many symphony concerts in those days. I don't know how they do it now. I haven't attended symphony concerts since you and I went a number of years ago. But,
Yeah.
they would all start out playing the Star Spangled Banner. And so since it was the Israeli Philharmonic, they started out by playing the Star Spangled Banner and then Hatikva. The conductor comes in and the audience gets silent and everyone stands to hear the Star Spangled Banner. And the girl from South Africa looks at me very strange and she goes, why is everybody standing? And I said, well, we're about to sing our national anthem, the Star Spangled Banner. And she goes, you're standing for your national anthem? I said, yeah. I said, well, don't you stand for your national anthem in South Africa? So she said, yeah, everybody would stand up and walk out.
Because it's the 70s with apartheid.
Yeah, that surprised me. She goes, yeah, everybody would stand up and walk out. So
I just want to be clear. So then they would leave out of protest because they were for the apartheid or against the apartheid?
I don't know. She just told me that in her country, it's not the custom to stand for the national anthem.
Now I'm very curious.
Yeah, I don't know why she didn't explain why.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think because there was the South African national anthem was a combined version of Nkosi Sikelel Afrika, God Bless Africa, and Distem van Suid-Afrika, the Call of South Africa. It stands as a powerful symbol of the country's journey towards unity and reconciliation, embracing both what is African and Afrikaner heritage. But it doesn't say about if they.
Well, I'm sure they've got a new one now. They must have a new national
anthem. It was in 1997 the two anthems merged. I see. So there's two different. It seems like there was two different anthems. There's two different anthems, and the anthem has 4 languages to sing from. There's like the lyrics employ 5 of the most popular spoken South African 11 official languages. South Africa has 11 official languages.
Oh my God.
That's amazing.
Man, wow. How do you communicate languages?
Well, I guess they never really. I'm looking at the background. I see. So the national anthem for South Africa back in 1970s was Die Stem van Suid-Afrika, also known as Die Stem. It was an Afrikaans language song that chronicles Vertrekkers and the Great Trek. Okay. And there was a co-national anthem with God Save the King. So there's a lot of, so maybe she was against apartheid, and it was out of protest, because the main national anthem was at the time a more of an apartheid type of national anthem.
Could be.
You've mentioned the South African friend of yours multiple times. Are you still like friends with her, or
No, I lost contact with her, unfortunately.
just over the years, or once you got married like it normally does?
Once she moved back to South Africa.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, she invited me to her wedding, but I didn't have the money to fly to South Africa.
That was more being polite, I think. I think
Yeah.
some people in other countries, they do polite invites. They don't really expect you to come, but they think that if you don't get an invite, it's being rude.
Yeah, it is. Actually, I've done that before, where there was somebody I invited to for one of your kids' weddings, and their daughter told me, don't bother, they're sick, they don't bother sending it. I said, no, I said, it's only polite to send her an invitation so that she knows we're thinking about her.
That actually triggers another question I have for you. Do you ever notice that the standard of etiquette from when you were younger to today has changed? I know the answer is yes, but the question is how, and is it for the better or for worse?
Well, I'll tell you, this business of the email wedding invitations, when it first started, it was like, no way. I think it started with your first.
Yeah.
And your father and I said, no way, no way. A lot of people felt that it was rude.
Yes.
At the time. And so, we of course had the regular standard, mail invitations. But finally, with your youngest sister, I was overruled. And she says, we're sending it email. That's it.
I've gotten email. You know what I also got? Text message image. I received an image invitation from some people.
What's an image invitation? It's like,
so it's just the image of the invitation, and they just text it to you.
I've seen that. Yeah. Or you get a link, and it's it looks like a regular card invitation, and it actually opens. It opens.
Oh yeah.
And you see the printing inside.
That's a little fancier. But I think yes. I think in a way I agree and disagree. I think a physical invitation is very important, and I think it shows more etiquette and it shows more demure. But I think I guess people are just too tired nowadays and too busy. Like I don't have time to go pick. Yeah, exactly.
Well, I remember the first time with one of your older sisters that there was a man who would computerize the invitations, the address, and then instead of you having to sit like years ago and handwrite, you and the whole family together gets and they handwrite the envelopes. He would put it on computer and would be able to really just, get all the addresses out like that so that you could mail it. And you didn't have to do anything. It was already mailed out, whatever. Well, the list he was using, there was a whole page that he missed. And when I heard, my mother called me, other people called me, hey, you didn't invite. And I go, yes, we did. And they go, they never got their invitation. And then we called the person. That turned out there was a whole page that he had missed. We had to get on that. It was like days before the wedding. We just had to get on that phone, call people. Sorry, there was the person who printed out the envelopes made a mistake and missed the whole page. You are invited. Here's where it's going to be. Here's the time. Please come.
Wow. Here's the other thing I'm noticing. Today's standard of thank you notes and thank you cards. I think people have changed it up a little bit. I can't. So like we went to a bar mitzvah, like earlier last year, and we sent it in, and we got a thank you note. But the thank you note that we got, though, the way it was worded, I felt was very. It wasn't too elaborate. It wasn't too like I remember I wrote my thank you notes, and I had to go ahead and spend all day writing it. And because Tati didn't explain to me what a thank you note was and what to write, and here's what you're supposed to write, he kind of just said, write a thank you note. I wrote, thank you for the gift. See you next Simcha. And that was it. And he got so upset. He's like, you do it again. You write all over. So I went ahead and I had to like figure out like, what am I supposed to write? What am I supposed to say? And like he explained after I messed up and he yelled and screamed at whatever. It finally got into an explanation of what I'm supposed to write, which looking back, like he could have just told me that from the beginning, gave me a template, I would have done it no problem. Like whatever.
But I remember my mother sitting at my bar mitzvah present. My mother sitting me down at the dining room table with a whole stack of little thank you cards, and she told me exactly what to write. Thank you for the blah blah blah. I will thank you for the money. I will put it in my bank and use it well. It's very thoughtful of you, or it's nice it's wonderful that your generous gift is now going to be part of my future. That type of thing, Or, thank you. Most of my bar mitzvah gifts, the majority of my bar mitzvah gifts were, I'm trying to think, pajamas. Kid you not. Pajamas was number one. Oh, and beach bags.
Why beach bags?
It was the popular thing at the time, a beach bag. You had your bathing suit and everything. You took all your stuff to the beach in a beach bag. And so I said to my mother, do people think I do anything other than sleep and swim?
Did you swim?
My gifts were beach bags and pajamas.
Beach bags and pajamas. Wow. Yeah. That's pretty funny.
But
that's very interesting. And because the reason I was saying is because the thank you note like that we got was very like 2-sentence, 3-sentence, thank you note. And I remember I had to write like a whole paragraph for mine. So I got a little like, oh, come on. I wrote a whole paragraph for my thank you note. But then again, it just whatever.
Well, I remember after I was married and friends of mine were getting married, I received one of the thank you notes I received was, instead of a handwritten thank you note, which was standard at the time, which was considered etiquette, I got a printed out standard thank you for the gift. Thank you for the gift. Thank you for the gift. Thank you, and it was nice you were at our wedding. And it's like this person. You could say this person went to a printer or something and just mass produced all these. Thank you notes. I was a little irritated with her, but
for my thank you notes in the later on, I found a loophole. I basically had a template of my physical handwriting on the key on Microsoft Word.
Oh,
so I wrote a standard letter with my handwriting, and then I would just sign it, and I would leave the top blank. I would say dear, and I leave it blank, put the paragraph in, and I print a whole bunch of them. And then if I had to write, and I would handwrite the person I was writing to, and then the signature. So it's a little personal, a little not, but still it like saved me time, because if not, I'd sit there and I have to do everything.
Yep. I remember before the days of computer like that, sitting just writing, like you felt like your hand was going to fall off.
You know what's funny though? So because of AI and because of ChatGPT and how like writing reports nowadays has lost all of its meaning, people are now resorting to physical writing a report and in front of the professor, where you have to write an essay, do it in front of the professor, handwritten, 2-3 pages, because it's just nearly impossible now to detect, all these reports, because they're covered up so well. So
it's like we're going back now to handwriting.
Yeah.
We're going back now. We've come full circle.
Exactly. Exactly.
Now all we need to do now have ink and quill.
Yes, yes. Well, that was something else I talked about. I think because the thing about AI is that I don't believe AI is going to destroy all the jobs in the world and take away everything. I think it's going to be a tool that's going to be utilized and get better over time, but it's not necessarily going to be this end all be all destroy all humans that people are like somewhat trying to predict.
Oh, it's not. When I was a kid, there were so many technological advancements that the big question of the day was, will machines take over mankind? And I asked that question to my mother, and my mother always said the same thing. No, because it takes human beings to run the machines.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what I was talking to a few people about earlier today. Somebody was going ahead and trying to figure out what was going on with some laws and writing some things. And they were using, various parts of AI to help them assist them. But they still have to review everything. They still have to look at everything. They still have to clarify, make sure it was done correctly. Because a lot of times this AI or this ChatGPT, it's not perfect. And people forget how imperfect it is. Kind of like that story you told me when I was younger about a friend of yours who didn't understand what autopilot, not autopilot, but cruising on a car was. Do you remember that?
It was actually it was a news item that this man was there was a guy from, I think, India or something, and he was driving this van from this particular company. I guess it had equipment in it or something he was delivering. And when he saw cruise control, he thought it was autopilot. And he put on the cruise control and decided to go in the back of the van and get a cup of tea. And the van ran off the road and turned over. He was okay, a little shaken up.
But what's funny is nowadays that actually can happen. It's they're still working out the kinks, but automatic cars is something that is basically around nowadays.
Well, did you see that on YouTube? The guy that took I don't know if it was an Uber or whatever. They sent him it was a self-driving car.
Mm-hmm.
And it was supposed to take him to the airport, and something went wrong. It's on YouTube. And and the thing, instead of dropping him off right there, it's going around the air, it's going past the departure area of the airport, and it continues to go, and it goes around. It's going around and around. So he called the company and he said, "Hey, this is an emergency." He says, "This self-driving car is not dropping me off. It's not stopping. It's just going around and around and around the airport." He said, "I need to get off." So the woman said to him, "Well, there's nothing we can do from this end. You have to get on your app, and you have to," she said he had to get on the app and do something on his app to get the car to stop. Because, "What do you mean you can't do anything? Or don't you control this thing?" She goes, "No, it's controlled through your app. You have to do something through your app." And the poor guy was just, I don't know if it was a put on or if it was for real.
I mean, stuff like that, I'm not surprised. And that's what I said before. It's that there's so much like fallibility, that's a word, in technology that I don't think it's going to take over anything. It's going to make things a little easier, more efficient, but it's not going to take over.
Well, actually, I took a coming back from the airport, the Lyft driver.
That's another episode of Jewish Boy Calls His Mother. Thanks for listening to us kvetch, reminisce, and of course, get a little motherly advice along the way. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share with your favorite Jewish mother or anyone who needs a little guilt in their life. Got a story, question, or just want to say hi? Send us a message. I'd love to hear from you. Until next time, call your mother. She worries.